I'm Terence Komal. Whilst we delve into the COVID-19 and its impact on people, communities, healthcare, livelihoods, and the economies in South Africa, Africa, and internationally, there is a particular group of people that some may have forgotten. Yes, everyone is vulnerable in terms of the context in how they're affected by what happens, by the COVID-19 crisis and what it's done to them and their families and their livelihoods. But this particular community of people, and not a unified community, people spread across Southern Africa, are people who have been involved in claims related to personal injury. These are victims of accidents, motor vehicle accidents, train accidents, negligence, and other related matters. In a large amount of these cases, if not the majority of these cases, the victims of these accidents and injuries were not direct contributors or participants in what caused their injury. Some of them were merely passengers in a taxi or a public transport system. Some of them were users of a train system. Others were family members when someone was driving their car. Others were going around about their business as part of families or going to work, and they were injured by an accident caused by a third party, either due to direct negligence or purely due to circumstances beyond their control. I primarily lead businesses in this space and consult and advise across the country and beyond Southern Africa internationally in the personal injury space. And what I've seen is been a massive injustice to this community of individuals. One of the largest social insurers in Southern Africa is the Road Accident Fund, an entity whose board I had served on for a significant period. But of late, there's been massive changes to the entity being a government body from a funding perspective, from a leadership and management perspective, but most importantly, as a result of COVID. Because all the offices across the country were shut down, by and large. All the offices for the organization, from what I understand, had attempted to stay open, and some ingenious law firms that happened to represent these very claimants had brought an application to declare that the Road Accident Fund is not an essential service, which makes absolutely no sense to me. But be that as it may, the reality is millions of people, their families, and their communities are impacted because their claim matters could not be processed timeously, actively, and effectively. And this resulted in a large amount of backlog in people's claims. Just imagine if that individual was your family member, if it was your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your child, who had an injury, a brain injury, a fractured leg, a fractured spine, an injury that impairs their ability to function in their day-to-day life, that impairs their abilities to complete their activities of daily living and their self-care. This must be hugely frustrating and disheartening because the majority of these cases land up in the courts and litigation takes long. Now that COVID had impacted the court systems, it had impacted the Road Accident Fund and a large amount of the law firms, the claims have just been pushed back, which means your access to justice, the individual's access to justice, has been delayed and to a large extent denied for an extended period. And this is extremely frustrating because us as healthcare practitioners and providers across the country, we want to assist, we want to provide the services, yet we find circumstances and changes beyond our control. I truly believe more needs to be done now that Southern Africa has moved, and South Africa in particular has relaxed a lot of the lockdown regulations to make sure that responsible processes are put in place, but an accelerated responsible process is put in place so that claims can be actively managed, claims can be actively adjudicated, and assessments can be done so that they, as a direct contributor of assessments and the claim process, can contribute to a fair decision-making process, and so that justice and fair and due compensation is provided to the claimant, their families, and those affected by that. Now, when I say those who are affected by the claim and the claimant, some may ask, but if person A or my sister is in an accident, who are these other people involved? Well, if that sister in this example was involved and they passed on, or they've lost the ability to earn an income, then their loss of income impacts the family. And if they have passed on, regrettably, then there's a claim for a loss of support. Because as a breadwinner, as a contributor to the family, there is a massive need for the dependents to ensure that there's due compensation for their losses. If the person has passed on, their funeral expenses, if there are other expenses related to family needs, these need to be fairly compensated in genuine claims. There are structural changes. There are changes in which the Road Accident Fund, for many years, even during my term on the board roles and beyond, has been trying to restructure into the Road Accident Benefit Scheme, which has some interesting and positive changes, and there are some questionable changes, but with a positive intent to reduce the risk on the state, but also to provide an ongoing system in which the claimants directly benefit, as opposed to those who lead the claims, so that the claimants benefit in their income, their benefits, their protection, their support, their medical care is ongoing, but in a financially viable manner, so that the state can actively and effectively provide those services as soon as possible with minimum disruption but maximum benefit for the individuals. So I again stress to you, there is this vulnerable community. Let's all stand up and try and understand. These communities are extremely vulnerable. These families and their communities are massively impacted, because an entire generation may be impacted if there's delays in justice, if there's delays in their treatment and compensations. And the solution lies in our hands, as well as the regulators' hands, to actively take action right now, to accelerate what we're doing, to accelerate the assessments and claims, and find fair and good settlements to make sure that justice is done and the necessary compensation is provided, so that the family can try and return to some level of normalcy, and that necessary care is provided for the individual who's directly impacted as a victim of these personal injury claims and a victim of the circumstances most likely beyond their control.